Hi, my name's Ryan, and I run a group called Google Developer Group, Cloud Pasadena. Hi, Odie. Um, Today, we're going to build a secure dashboard with Angular and Firebase, and by the end of the tutorial, this is what you'll have. So right now, you can see no one's logged in. So if you try to go to dashboard, you're not able to. Same thing for the admin dashboard. There's a sign up page. There's a login page. As soon as you log in, you're brought over to your dashboard. We can see it automatically does a query on Cloud Firestore for information about the user. There's a forgot password page. And there's a resend email verification page. Now, there are 5 steps to this process. If you want to do all of this on your own pace, in the description is a link to this project. And you can see that the README file is going to say almost every single thing I'm going to tell you here. First, we're going to create the Firebase app. Then we're going to create the Angular app. We're going to merge them together so they can communicate. Step 4 is we're going to fix Firebase's security. So it's going to give you and everybody in the whole world access to the database. We don't want that. So stay tuned for that piece, at least. And then step 5, I'm going to show you the easy way how to build for production and take all of your hard work and put on your web server. So let's start with step 1. Jump over to firebase.google.com and go to console. From here, add project. And I'm going to create a project called dashboard. We don't need Google Analytics. Create project. Okay, continue. And it's going to bring us to the dashboard for this new app. We want to tell it that we're going to use the app on a website. So click on this web link. The nickname doesn't matter, so I'll just call it dashboard again. We don't need Firebase hosting, and click register app. So this piece is really important. Just grab the Firebase config variable, copy it, and throw it into a text editor. And this is what's going to let Firebase and Angular communicate with each other. But for now, just go ahead and click continue to console. So we're setting up 2 things in Firebase, authentication and access to a Cloud Firestore database. Click on authentication and get started. We're going to choose just email and password. So click that line and then enable and save. Now, when you have users, you can come over to the users tab and you'll see them here. You can also add them manually, but our app is going to do it automatically. So click on Firestore database. This is the Cloud Firestore, and then create database. Now, here's the problem. Here's a problem that we're going to fix. This is step number 4 is the fix. For right now, we're just going to choose start in test mode. Test mode says we're going to allow a read and a write for anyone in the world, as long as they have a link to this database, so long as it's not a month from now. Production says allow a read and a write if false, meaning never. So we start in test mode, we'll build the app, and then in step 4, we're going to change our permissions, so it'll only work for the people we want. Click next. And now we have to choose a location. So they're not very clear. If you go to this link, you can see all of the locations that Firebase offers right now. So I'll choose mine and enable. Okay, so just like we have an empty authentication, we have an empty database now. We can manually create anything we want, but we don't need to. Our app is going to automatically create our collections, create our documents, everything. This is all we need for Firebase. So we're going to go back and recreate this app now. So in a terminal, I'm going to first check that I have the right version of Angular. You need at least Angular 9. I really would suggest using the newest one. So you can just type Angular version. And you can see that I have Angular CLI 11.2. You can also just upgrade for yourself. npm install globally Angular CLI. Let's create the app. Angular new Angular Firebase dashboard. Do you want to enforce stricter type checking? No. Would you like to add routing? Yes. And which style sheet? CSS. Okay, let's jump into that directory. Now we're going to add the library for Firebase, ng-add at angular/fire. And we'll choose the app inside of Firebase. And now we're going to add Angular material. This is to help us style the basics of the app. Choose any theme. And we want typography, yes. Browser animations, yes. And if you don't want any of these things, you can still choose them. And when we build for production, they'll be stripped out if you don't use them. Okay, now we're going to start the server. ng-serve. Okay, if we open up localhost at port 4200, now we have our server running. Now our job is to take this and make it look like that. So let's get to it. I'm going to open a new tab, and I'm going to open Visual Studio Code in this directory. First thing I want to do is remove all of the boilerplate. You can find that in source app appcomponent.html. Go to the very bottom of the file, and the only thing we're going to keep is this router outlet. Get rid of absolutely everything else. And it refreshes and all goes away. Now we're going to add all of the pages or components. So there's going to be a number of them: home, sign up, login, forgot password, verify email, dashboard, and admin dashboard. To do all of this, just type ng-gc, Angular generate component, and then its name: home, sign up, login, forgot password, verify email, and our last two, dashboard and admin dashboard. So all of our components are built. Now we're going to build the authentication service and the authentication guard, which only allows you into a page if you're logged in. So ng generate service. Now I'm going to put it in a folder called services, and it'll be called auth. And I'm going to say ng generate guard, put it in a folder called services, and I'll also call it auth. Which interface? It's going to be can activate. Now the components have been created, but we can't actually navigate to them. To do that, we go to source, app routing module. We're going to import all of the components and the service and the guard that we just created. So to do that, you just add the following lines. Now we're going to create what routes go. So whatever path that someone types in, it'll go to a certain component. And these are all of the routes. If no path is given, go to the home component. If they type in admin, go to the admin dashboard. And these two have can activate auth guard attached to them, which means you can only access it if you're logged in. The rest of them are just regular links. Now we're on to step number 3. We're going to have the Angular app and the Firebase app communicate with each other. To do that, go to source, environments, go to your environment files and open them up. Take the Firebase config variable that you copied and paste it in. We're going to make one change. Get rid of the equal sign and change it from Firebase config to just Firebase. Get rid of the semicolon too. So copy this over to both files. Okay, we're going to add one more piece to this project. We don't want anyone else to have access to our environment variables. So what we're going to do is go to the gitignore file, or .gitignore. Skip this if you're not using Git, but if you are, I want you to write source environments **. So this will make sure that the source environments folder, which now turned white, is not going to be uploaded when you save your project. So you can close that file and close your environments, and we're done. Let's get everything working so we can navigate from page to page. To do that, we're going to go into the app module. So source app module.ts. And we're going to add all of the Angular material and Firebase modules here. So I really suggest just downloading my project because you are going to see how many imports we have to do. That many. But you can see it's going to be all of the material design, or Angular material, and then something to help us with forms, HTTP, all of our Angular, and then the environments file that we're importing. So that's the import. Now we have to add it to our imports array. There we go. Now our app module is ready and we can navigate. Now at the moment, if we were to type in dashboard, we can get to dashboard. We don't want that. So we're going to put in the auth guard. So now go to source app services authguard.ts. Okay, first thing we need to do is add router, and then we're going to import Angular Fire Auth. Next, we're going to give ourselves access to the Angular Fire authentication variable. So constructor, we're going to call it AFAuth. And finally, instead of always returning true on can activate, we're actually going to change the code to this. So Angular Fire is going to check if the user exists and return true. If they don't, if they're trying to go somewhere that we don't want them to go to, we're going to send them to home. I also commented a bit of code here that you can put in, so not only if the user exists, but if they exist and they've already verified their email address, which is a nice thing to do. For us, for now, it's just commented out. Okay, the next step is to work with the service, the authentication service. So open up source app services auth.service.ts. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is import a lot of libraries, basically all of your Angular libraries and the router so we can navigate to different places. The next thing is to have a nice trick. I want a variable that tracks whether or not the user's logged in. It takes about a half a second to always ask Firebase. But if we do it this way, we know instantaneously. Next, we're going to change this constructor so we have access to all the libraries. And here we are. We can work with the router, Angular Fire Auth, and Angular Firestore. We're also creating a subscription so that every time the authentication state changes, log out essentially, we'll know and our variable tracks that. The last thing to do is we're going to have all of the services for authentication put in here. There's a lot, but if you read through each, we just have the login, the sign up code, the reset password code, resending verification email, log out, and set user. It's really not too hard when you look at each by itself. When we want a user to log in, we just call Angular Fire Auth and tell it its sign in with email and password function, sending the email and password that were in our form. If it works perfectly, we just do a console log, and if there's an error, we return what that error is. Same thing goes for sign up. We talk to our Angular Fire AFAuth, Angular Fire authentication variable. We call create user with email and password. If it works perfectly, at this point we'll talk to Angular Firestore. We'll create a document inside of a new collection called users. If that collection doesn't exist, this creates it automatically. If the document doesn't exist, this creates it automatically. And what we're going to set is what type of user they are, either end user or admin. We'll always start someone at end user. We'll say what the display name is, what the email is, but then we also have these underscore lower. It doesn't let you search a field with being case insensitive. So that's why I put underscore lower, so that if ever we need to search a field, we'll always search this. That's all there is for services. Now, you've seen that I copied a lot of code from the project explaining it. The next piece is just copying the HTML and the TS TypeScript files into all of those components that created. So just go into source app, and every single one of them, admin dashboard, forgot password, home, login, sign up and verify email, just open up the HTML file, the TS file. Go into the project that you've downloaded and just paste it all in. It's just for the layout, So I'll see you back in just a minute. It's not enough to be here and just copy paste, so let's go through the important stuff. Let's start with home, because that's the page we'll always land on. Right now it's just telling us the user's not logged in. And if we go to the HTML, lots of buttons, but at the bottom it says, show me this card if, looking at AF Auth or Angular Firestore authentication, if the user exists, show me that the user's logged in. So essentially it says, go back to the Angular Firestore library, ask if we have the user object. If we do, we know they exist. And it says pipe async because it takes a little while, this is a promise, it takes a little while to ask Angular Firebase for whether or not the user exists, and then we get the response. So that's why it's written this way. Everything else, it's a regular button. You either click it and it brings you to a page, or you click it and it brings you to some code. For instance, logout. When we look at the TypeScript, there's only that function for logout, and it simply says, go to my variable for Angular FireAuth and sign the person out. Easy as that. So that's home. Let's go to the sign up. So if we go to sign up, we see a form with 3 elements, your name, your email, and your password. If we look in our code, sign up HTML has full name, email, and password. And there's a couple extra pieces hidden. If there's an error message, we will be printing it out here, but we only show it if it's not empty. And also there's a progress bar at the bottom. It takes again another second to talk to Firebase, so we have a progress bar. If we look at the TypeScript, we've brought in the libraries for our own authentication service and then for Angular FireAuth. So what we do is when we sign up the user, we're going to say, if the form's invalid, just don't work with it. And here's a trick for you. This sign up form, as you're playing around and getting used to this, hard code something in there for you. It's really helpful to work like this. So let's say that they've clicked sign up. We spin the progress bar. We ask our authentication service to sign the user up. And then we either return successfully and send them to the dashboard, or we return false and show them the message. Well, let's follow this through. We go to our authentication service to the sign up function. So we can go to services, auth service, and we go to the sign up function. We just called our own function that we wrote a moment ago. This calls the Firestore authentication service. It calls their create user with email and password function. That's how the sign up works. Let's go look at dashboard. The dashboard HTML is the simplest in the entire website. All it does is it shows you the user info. It says, if I have anything in my user variable, then show it. And now if we look at the code, every time that this page loads, ng on init, we're going to call Angular FireAuth, and then we're going to ask it for who the user is. And then if there is a user logged in, I want to get the email. We just ask user.email, say to lower, and then we're going to call Firestore, Cloud Firestore. We're going to go to our collection of users, and we're going to ask for the document based on the user's email. If we look at Firestore, and we go to Firestore database, it created the user collection. It created the ryan@test.com document, and it shows us all this information. So that's how this query works. But that's how we create the Angular app, how we create the Firebase app, and how we get them to communicate with each other. We have just 2 more pieces. Step number 4, let's go back into Cloud Firestore and then to the rules. Now we set this up in test mode, which says allow read and write as long as it hasn't been a month. We're going to change this. Instead of on the entire database, we're going to say match users database collection, and instead of just saying the document, we're going to say user email. This is the document name, and now it's a variable called user email. And we're going to say allow read write if request.auth, the authorized user, is not null. Now what this is going to do is let anybody read and write as long as they've logged in. It's not the greatest. What we really should do is allow them to read and update just their own records. Allow read if request.auth.token.email.lower equals our new variable of user email. And then allow write if false. And when we use our variable, we don't put it inside the curlies. So this is a better one. I'm going to take this out. We're going to stick to a simple, allow them to edit, read and write as long as they're logged in. Publish this. And now only the people who are members of our site can actually work on their own documents or any document. Step 5, build for production. This is really easy. ng build --prod. This will take a minute, and when it's done, we're going to have a new folder. Okay, this took a full minute. That's why we don't build for production always, but we do have a new folder. Distribution or dist, and then the name of the project, and then all of these files. You just take everything inside, so every one of these files, upload them to your HTML directory in your web server, and this is the complete project able to run anywhere. I hope this tutorial really helped you. If it did, please let me know, and if you have any suggestions for future projects, I'd love to hear. Thanks.